The Monday, June 13th, 2022 regular meeting of the Paris City Council is hereby called to order at 5:30 p.m. For the purpose of this meeting, there is a quorum of the council present. Item number 2, Mr. Gene Anderson will deliver the invocation, and item number 3, the Pledge of Allegiance, will be led by Mayor Pro Tem Hughes. Please rise.
May we pray? Heavenly Father, we thank you as always for your many blessings, for we know that you are the creator and sustainer of the universe, and we thank you, Father, for all the things that you give us and provide for us, and we just pray for your continued blessing upon this city. We pray that you'd guide and direct our leaders tonight as they conduct the city business. And Father, we just pray for peace throughout, not just our land, Father, but all around the world. We're asking in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item number 4 is a proclamation recognizing the Paris Junior College softball team. Whereas we realize that participation in organized athletics helps to build character and teaches a wholesome sense of fair play and good sportsmanship. And whereas to excel in a sport, a person must demonstrate a great deal of natural ability, an outstanding spirit of dedication, enthusiasm, and hard work. And whereas a striking example of this has been brought to our attention in the achievement of the Paris Junior College Dragons softball team, having set new records in the history of PJC. And whereas the PJC Dragons softball team finished in the top 6 in the country, had 39 wins, first ever NJCAA national ranking, Mid-South B champions, national tournament appearance, and whereas the PJC Dragons softball team has the highest GPA in program history, and whereas the PJC Dragons softball team was awarded the National Tournament Sportsmanship Award. And whereas these remarkable athletes, along with their coaches, had a willingness to make sacrifices through hard work, total commitment, dedicated training, and the preparation needed to achieve these honors. And now, therefore, I, Paula Portugal, Mayor of the City of Paris, Texas, by the authority vested in me as Mayor of the city, on behalf of the Paris City Council and all citizens, hereby recognize the accomplishments of the 2021-2022 PJC Dragons softball team. Signed this 13th day of June, 2022, Paula Portugal. Ladies, would you come forward down front? Welcome and congratulations. Congratulations. And how about that GPA? Thank you, Dr. Y'all have a good summer.
Thank you so much.
Item number B is presentation of the Mayor's Yard of the Month Awards. And council, when it's in a recipient in your district, if you'd please join me down on the floor. Thank you.
Okay.
The first is Aiken Elementary for outstanding property appearance. And we have
Clayton.
the principal, Ms. Donna,
Clayton.
here to accept.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was Clayton's district.
Oh, okay, sure.
Thank you.
Have a good summer. The gift cards are donated by Keep Paris Beautiful, and Ms. Crawford is the chairman of the board. For our outstanding property on 3310 Abbey Lane, Ms. Burl Bryant. I don't think she's here. Here, you can stop. Oh.
Okay.
We will mail that to her. The outstanding property at 2120 Bonham Street is Haskell and Deanna Roberts. Are they here? And outstanding property at 307 West Washington is Dee Dee Brock. Congratulations. Thank you. Oh, she gets a card.
She does get a card.
Yeah.
And a photograph with the mayor pro tem. How are you?
Good. Oh, this is your council member.
It's right here.
This is your council member, Mayor Pro Tem Buddy Hughes.
People from the west side for sure.
Okay, I'm gonna take your picture together.
Oh, yeah, their picture, please.
Okay.
Thank you. Yes, outstanding commercial property, because it does bring dollars to Paris, is the Love Civic Center. And look who's Congratulations. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Oh, Mr. Savage.
I'm a little faster than me here.
You are.
So anyway, who's in charge of the card? Okay, 25 bucks, there you go. Small claims.
And the rehab of the month is Monique's Antiques, and Monique is out of town, but we will mail all these to them. Thank you. Thank you. Item number C is the Citizens Forum. Persons desiring to address the council must limit their presentation to no more than 2 minutes. Unless an item is posted on the agenda, the Texas Open Meetings Act prohibits the council from responding to any comments other than to refer the matter to a future agenda, to an existing policy, or to a staff person with specific factual information. Claims against the city council members or employees, as well as individual personal appeals, are not appropriate for citizens forum. If necessary, the city council may convene into executive session under Chapter 551 of the Texas Government Code regarding any item on this agenda. The public forum is now open. If there is anyone who wishes to address the council, please state your name and address for the record. You may come up to the mic. How are you?
Great, how are y'all?
Good.
Good. I'm Amanda Green. I'm the Paris-Lamar County Health District Director. I live at 2400, it's now County Road 41100 instead of Stillhouse Road. I just wanted to thank y'all for taking up the vaping ordinance discussion on the agenda tonight. I wanted to come talk about it because I was on the original committee that did the smoking ordinance, At that time, the vaping was carved out as a compromise on the committee that worked on that. And the reason for that was that there were several business owners that were just starting out vaping business in town. There wasn't a lot of data about it at that time. So they argued that it was all unknown about what vaping would do to people. And so that was carved out. Now we know that vaping does cause serious lung disease, including popcorn lung. And we know that while some older people may use it as a way to quit smoking, it's a pathway that a lot of younger people have started smoking, using marijuana or other drugs once they've started vaping. 75 different cities across Texas have already taken up vaping ordinances, so at that time we also didn't have a lot of comparisons, and now we have a lot of comparisons to look at. In terms of public health, the reasoning for having a vaping ordinance is that, of course, the people around others who are vaping, they're breathing in the toxic chemicals, and it carries on the oil and it hangs for quite a long time. It also gets on surfaces and clothes, and children have been found to even get poisoned by very low amounts of this oil because the concentrations are different in each vaping, so it can harm children who touch items. And also, of course, younger people see cool older adults using it, and so as an idea of not having people in our community vaping publicly, that has been recommended for public health. Texas law actually states, I believe, and I am not a lawyer, but just in the article I read in the Texas Medical Association, that if you already have a smoking ordinance, it covers vaping, but there is a carve out for restaurants and bars. So I think for Paris, what it would mainly just cover is looping in restaurants in Paris, as far as I can tell. I'm, of course, totally an advocate for looping in bars to our ordinance, but that was also one of the carves out as a compromise. So thank you all again for taking up this public health measure. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Green. Anyone else wishing to address the council? Seeing none, the citizens' forum is now closed. On the consent agenda, items on the consent agenda are approved by a single action of the council, with such approval applicable to all items appearing on the consent agenda. A council member may request any item to be removed from the consent agenda and consider it as a separate item. Does any member wish to remove an item from the agenda for discussion? Seeing none, I'll hear a motion to approve all items on the agenda.
So moved.
There's
Second.
a movement and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no. Seeing none, motion carries unanimously. Item number 11 on the regular agenda, discuss and act on a resolution approving an economic development agreement with Paris Hotel LP regarding Town Place Suites and Fairfield Inn. Councilmember Pankaj has asked to be recused from item number 11 because he has a conflict. Do I have a motion and a second to recuse Councilmember Pankaj?
Move. Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. You're recused,
Thank you.
Mr. Pankaj. Thank you. Staff, you have a presentation, please.
I do. I'm standing in for Grayson on this item today. We have been working with Paris Hotel LP with a Mr. Tom Kirkland. Is Mr. Kirkland here this evening? Oh, great. He's here, and so he'll be able to answer any questions that you have. He's building a Town Place Suites and Fairfield Inn development on 271 North. And that is a dual-branded hotel. Those are both Marriott properties. And so we have given him our retail economic development policy, which the council approved in January, and his development qualifies for incentives under that policy. And the agreement that we have come up with is an agreement by which the city will provide the company with 5 annual property tax grants in the amount of 100% of the city's M&O property tax assessed in the incremental taxable value attributable to the project. The grants cover the years 2024, 2025, 2026, 2027, and 2028. And there are 3 annual sales tax grants in the amount of 50% of the sales tax receipts in the applicable grant period. The grants cover the years 2024, 2025, and 2026. As consideration for those incentives, Paris Hotel will invest $12 million in the construction of the project and shall open the hotel no later than December 31st, 2023. It will maintain the property as a Town Place Suites and Fairfield Inn for the duration of the agreement. And each year that they're seeking a grant, you'll see on the agreement that Exhibit B is a whole bunch of forms. And that's so each year they can fill in that form and submit it to the city for request for those grants, and that helps with our bookkeeping, and providing the forms helps him so that he doesn't have to write a letter every year. So we tried to make it as easy on everybody as we could. There is probably not a big sales tax impact, although he is putting in a bar in this facility, so we may see some sales tax as a result of alcohol sales on that. Typically, hotels don't have a lot of sales tax, but while it is not a portion of this agreement, it will generate hotel taxes. And so those will be to the benefit of the city, as they go to the chamber, and that agreement we have with the chamber to manage those taxes to promote tourism and people coming into Paris. So, Mr. Kirkland, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Sure, thank you.
Welcome to Paris.
Thank you, and I have a sport coat in the car, but it is awful hot today, so I apologize in advance to all of y'all for not doing that. But yes, we're really excited about bringing a Marriott-branded product to Paris, and it's something that Marriott has wanted to do for a while, and we're fortunate that they selected our group to do that. We've been building Marriotts in different parts of Texas for the last 8 years, and so we're excited about the brand. It's actually our first dual brand to do, which, if you don't know a lot about Marriott, a Fairfield Inn and Suites is what we would call an overnight stay hotel. Town Place Suites is an extended stay. It's really geared for stays of 2 weeks or longer, and it's going to have kitchens and what you would expect for an extended stay, and they'll share the same common areas. So it's a popular method of hotels these days, the dual brand, and so we're excited about bringing that to Paris. She made reference to a bar. We're not going to have a bar in the hotel. We have a designated area where we'll serve alcoholic beverages to hotel guests, but it's not anything that's going to attract somebody from not a hotel guest into the establishment for that. So there'll probably be reason we'll be coming back here before that. We will have a sundry shop in there that will probably generate some sales tax, but a majority of our taxes will obviously be hotel occupancy tax, which should be significant. And then also our property value, I think, will really spur future development along that corridor of highway. So thank you for your consideration of this, and if there's questions you have of me, please ask that. But I imagine we'll be maybe before you all again as we proceed through this process.
Thank you. Council, any questions of staff or Mr. Kirkland?
I had a question, Ms. Harris, Ms. Harris. What does this mean in the amount equal to 100% of the city's M&O property tax? What is that?
It is the portion of the property tax, it's maintenance and operations, it's not debt service. So, their entire tax bill has some tax that covers debt service as well. That's excluded from that because we have to protect our debt service taxes. Did I explain that correctly, Grayson?
Okay, thank you.
So the staff recommendation is obviously that you approve this agreement.
All right. Any other questions?
No question, but I think it's great to just be getting another hotel here because, we lost a significant, the Archer, I think is what it was. We lost part of that because of hotels, so it's great to just be getting another hotel here. And I think the Marriott is a great hotel chain and Fairfield as well, so sounds good to me.
Thank you. I'll hear a motion.
I'll make a motion to adopt the resolution approving a Chapter 380 Economic Development Agreement with Paris Hotel LP related to the development, construction of a Town Place Suites and Fairfield Inn, and authorizing the mayor to execute same on behalf of the city.
Thank you. A second?
Second.
All right, a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Oh, well, all no. All,
5.
okay,
Six.
6-1. 6-0. All right. Do I have a motion to return Councilmember Pankaj to the meeting?
Make a motion to return Mr. Pankaj to the meeting.
And a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Motion carries. Mr. Pankaj may come back. Do we know where he is?
Right there, he's right there. He's listening? Thought he'd be listening. Thought he'd leave the door open.
You want me to go get him?
No, he's right there.
Yes, and he did. Welcome back, Mr. Pankaj. It was close, but we let you back.
Thank you. Happy to be back.
Item number 12, discuss and act on a resolution accepting the donation from Joseph K. Varner of property around the Lamar County Historical Museum building. Staff?
Yes, we are all aware here on the city council of some difficulties that have been experienced between the Lamar County Historical Association and Heritage Hall. The reason for those difficulties are that back in the day when that building was donated to the city for use as a historical museum, the donation was only for the exact footprint of that building. So it didn't even include a walk up to the entrance of the building. So over time, the Historical Association put a shop building back in the back that was an old church. They built a bathroom onto the side. Technically, that property did not belong to the city. We couldn't lease it to them. So that's been going on for quite some time. Recently, a generous donor has purchased property to the side, back behind that area, that is being used as a property swap. That land is being given to Mr. Varner for use of as a parking area, and in exchange for that, Mr. Varner wants to donate a strip of land around the footprint of the building, so that the bathroom is fine, the church shop building is fine, they can walk up to the front door, and the city owns that property. So this is a welcome solution to a longstanding problem. What we need to do is pass a resolution accepting that donation, and staff heartily recommends that you do that.
Thank you. Any discussion or questions? All right. I will hear a motion.
So moved.
A
Second.
second. Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Motion carries unanimously. Item number 13, discuss and act on a request from Supreme All, Inc. for reduction of rent at the Event Center for the months of June, July, and August. Mr. Path?
Yes, this item, the next item are for Supreme Mall, and I know Ms. Black is here tonight with us, and yep. So on July 22nd, 2019, the City Council approved a lease agreement for the use of the event center it's on the northeast corner of the fairgrounds, if you've been out that direction to see that, 1875 Fitzhugh Avenue. The terms summarized, and I've given you a copy of the lease in your packet, the terms summarized as rent is $1,200 a month. It was for 3 years from August 1st, 19 to July 31st of 2022 this year. It did have an automatic renewal option unless notice was given by April 30th, which notice was not given by either party, which is typical for a lot of our leases. So that renewal has kicked in. Also, the terms are to use and maintain for meal services and other related activities, including preparing, packaging, and serving food. Her primary purpose is to use the facility to prepare food for the Boys and Girls Club. And then lastly is tenant shall be responsible for the maintenance of facility and the parking area, so that she has oversight of the entire building, the utilities, everything with the building there. And again, I've attached a lease to this agenda packet here. Yes. So with that, going back to the Boys and Girls Club, again, that's her primary goal for Supreme Mall is to provide food for the Boys and Girls Club. She provides a meal, dinner typically on most days. During the COVID period, which much of our lease was during that period, she would provide a meal year-round for the Boys and Girls Club. Now, we learned here about a month or so ago, and I verified this with Jason Machiche, the Executive Director for Boys and Girls Club, that the state has a rule that the Boys and Girls Club can only receive food from one vendor per day, basically. And so during the school year, the school provides a meal for these youth at the school building. And so then she can provide a meal in the evening hours when they go to the Boys and Girls Club. When school is out for the summer, the school continues to produce food that they then send to the Boys and Girls Club. And so again, back to the state rules, according to Mr. Machis, they cannot accept food from another entity at the same time, so the Supreme Mall cannot also provide a meal the same day that the school provides a meal. So that's just part of the rules. That was apparently waived during COVID-19. I've not researched those rules. I took the executive director's word on this as well as Ms. Black's word on this. And so, but by talking to Mr. Machis, this is true. So with this, Supreme Mall will not be receiving revenue during the months of June, July, and August, because that's how through the state, she receives so much per child or per meal. I can't remember which way it is, but without producing meals, there's no revenue coming in, thus to pay us. Talking to Mr. Machis, he was very, very complimentary, very appreciative of the work she's doing for the Boys and Girls Club. He wanted to stress with me that this is a high-valued service that she's providing to them. And so with this, the request is for us to consider waiving the event center lease rent for June, July, August, because she will not have a revenue source coming in. Then when school comes back into session, the school will go back to serving during the daytime, then she can go back to serving in the evening, thus get revenue from the state to pay us. With this, given what I've seen she's been doing for the Boys and Girls Club, I had no reservation to recommend a waiver of the lease of the rent for those 3 months. Your options are to either waive completely, waive partially, or not waive at all and go forward in that. All options would be valid if you so chose them. But that's the situation in a nutshell, and she is here if you have questions for her as well.
All right, council, any discussion or questions?
Well, I just have one question. How does this affect the next item 14?
The two can run in parallel. When we get to that item, that one will take time anyways. Okay. And so if the council does pursue certain routes in that one, it will take time anyways. So we're talking months to complete that one.
Yeah. And, I just like to say that it is a matter of fact that during the COVID couple of years that they waived some rules that she could provide at the same time the school provided, but now it's a matter of fact that she cannot. They'll only accept, they put the rule back in place, reinstituted it that only one vendor can supply food at each facility. And she used to provide for City Square, I think up until next year to last year, and now she no longer provides for City Square, so she lost that revenue as well. Mm-hmm. And then just in looking at the lease contract, it was kind of limited as to what she could do there as far as bringing in revenue. So I have no problem waiving these fees.
I would also add that obviously the situation between the Boys and Girls Club and Supreme Mall is not our situation directly. Ours is the lease with them, but at the same time, as we have discussed in the past, we have worked with the Boys and Girls Club on looking at donating property to them. The council has expressed a connection, a public purpose for what they're doing there. So, according to Mr. Machis, Supreme Mall is highly valuable for the meals for those children. Again, that's not our situation there, but it does sound that the role we can play here may impact their relationship. So,
and it would impact citizens. These children are citizens of this community, so it's going to impact them more than a lot of people know if she didn't provide that service.
She would still be responsible for all maintenance of the facility. We would not incur costs for that. So that would still continue on. This would still be we would be losing some revenue with that, but we would not be gaining expense from that either.
We wouldn't have any other entities or anybody operating out of the building for those 3 months, though, is that correct? We would,
It should not be. Again, the lease is for for food preparation services. And that's all it can be used for. And I'm not sure, I can't remember the lease authorizes a subletting or assignment.
Well, it did, but she would have to come before you in order for something like that, and you would have to approve it.
If it's for,
Yeah.
that sounds familiar. I apologize, I didn't look back that far.
is the entity Supreme All Incorporated, is that in the 501(c) chapter as a nonprofit?
I'd have to defer to Ms. Black for that.
It is filed as a nonprofit? Okay.
I think it's a great service to the Boys and Girls Club. I would support waiving the fees for June, July, and August.
It's no fault of Supreme All that there's this state regulation.
Yeah.
So I would support that.
Yep, I agree, and I appreciate what you do for those kiddos. I got a question, Grayson. So, and I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm thinking backwards here, but if we're waiving, let's just say if we're potentially waiving the fee, is there restricted access to that building? Why would she have to do maintenance on that if she's not going to be at that building?
Well,
So let's just say if Supreme All turns over the key and says, hey, we're not going to touch this building for 3 months, I'm just curious.
Well, yeah, I hadn't proposed that she not be allowed into the building. She would still operate her nonprofit with this. I'm sure there's probably some planning, coordinating going on there. I'm sure it'd be much reduced, but no, I had not proposed that she turn a key over to us.
Okay, and then also, like Clayton was saying, is there anyone else that operates out of that building, or is this solely just Supreme All?
To our knowledge, it's entirely Supreme All.
Interesting, okay. That kind of goes into the next item for
Yeah,
questions.
I have no knowledge of any other entity operating out of the building.
Just curious.
It wouldn't be available for rent to another entity that wanted to maybe have a family reunion or something
Well,
like that?
the lease is
there?
with Supreme All for the entire building. That's one of the things, the lease, it's, the purpose is primarily the kitchen is what the purpose is for, but the entire building and the parking lot went with that. And
Well, I
so,
was just thinking about these months, because they're
Yeah.
really busy, and I didn't know, this is the time when people have family reunions and things,
Yeah.
and I didn't know if it would be available for rental for family reunions or parties or something like that, that the citizens might want to rent the building and use it, since Supreme All would not be in there using it.
yeah, well, the existing lease we have with her is rather restrictive on that. We would have to, I think I see what you're saying is if
The city
you're proposing
rent it.
that we kind of, she not use it for 3 months and then we use it for 3 months. Is that what you're proposing, or that
Well,
she
no, I was just
sublease it? Or
asking if that was going to be available.
Well, currently it would not be unless we amended the lease to give us access to that or allow her access to do that purpose.
Okay.
But under the current lease, that's not an option.
And that's the point that I was making earlier, that it's limited as to what she can do. Because if she could sublease it out and do the things that y'all are talking about, then she wouldn't be before us today. She would be able to lease it out to parties and different things that the city approved, and she would be able to come up with the rent.
Oh,
But-
I didn't mean that. I meant that, it's a
No.
city building, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm
And that
saying.
if she wasn't in there, then perhaps the city might be able to
Right,
rent
but
it
what I'm
to
saying
somebody.
is she would be in there
As a
if
five-
she could,
if
if
she's
she
a-
could sublease it out.
If she's a 501(c), she can't go for profit to do that, so that would release the entity, is what I'm saying.
And I-
And I agree with, if we're going to waive the rent, I think we get possession of the building for the 3 months, and then
We incur the
give her,
maintenance.
and we give her possession back.
Because of the 501c3
And-
status.
Right.
And I should, one moment, I apologize. I did find section 19, it does say that lessee shall not sublet premises or any part thereof without the consent in writing of lessor first had and obtained in hand. So yeah, she cannot just sublease it without our permission, which has typically been run through my office. And, but so there's an option to sublease it, but we have always gone back by the wording of the contract has always been, is it food preparation related services is what we've always gone back to. So, but yes, go ahead. Yeah.
And I also want to say, in those 3 months, I still have to have insurance on the building that I have to pay. And so if something is going on down there at the building, like a party or something,
Oh,
guess who it's gonna fall
And I
on?
and
My
I think that
nonprofit.
and I think what we're saying is you wouldn't have to have insurance. You would basically release building insurance, everything.
For
the-
3 months?
For the 3 months and then come back.
Well, I
whenever you
paid
need to.
insurance for a whole year.
Like I said, and if it's a
Yeah.
501(c), they have extremely specialized programs that I'm familiar
Yeah.
with that
And
they
and I
can do
wasn't,
that.
I wasn't proposing that.
No,
I
we
was
don't
just
want
Right.
you on your
asking-
I had
Right.
asked to
Yeah.
do that, and since you said I had asked, I wouldn't be here today if I could do that, because that would take care of the rent.
Sure.
Why? Because I had a ton of people call me for family reunions, and I can't do it. So if I could,
Yeah.
I wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
since
wasn't
I can't,
proposing
yeah.
that. I was
And
just
it's a great
asking
idea,
if
I
that
think.
was an option.
It's a
that
great
we
idea.
could do. Yeah, that was the only thing.
Yeah, but
so.
yeah, I have to pay the utilities still as well, and the insurance and everything down there.
Maintenance, if plumbing.
Plumbing, like I- yeah,
hot water
so-
heater,
And that's what I'm saying. In order to ease your mind, the 3 months, you wouldn't have to pay the rent, you wouldn't have to pay any of that stuff. We would take over those 3 months, I think is the right thing to do. That alleviates you from having an insurance problem if we had a tornado blow through or something crazy happen, or if you had a fire because you're not up there
Yeah,
as
because
much.
I had
those
to
3
buy,
months. I'd-
equipment to go in there.
Right,
Yeah.
I would rather us
Just for
take.
the
Yeah, we
nonprofit.
would want to have, we wouldn't want to rent it if her equipment's
It's
in
like
there.
Yeah, I
your
have to
personal
have certain
equipment.
Like I say, I
equipment by
think-
the health department to pass to be to do it, and I had to go buy that, and it's in there, so that's another thing covers in the insurance, all that
Okay.
equipment and stuff.
So in the 3 months, don't you have paperwork you still have to
Yes,
work
I do.
through the state? So-
Yeah, training I have to do to be up on code, just to, do the, food program.
Right.
If I can add real quick, I mean, we're already halfway through June. If we were to take it over and try to start leasing, I have to market it, coordinate, plan. By the time we get our act together, the 3 months is over. So I would not recommend that we take it over so that we can start renting it out, because it's just logistically, it's just not something we really need to take on right now. I should also add too that some of the things we talked about here about like family reunions, some of those may not qualify as public purposes. So we have to be careful when we walk along those lines there, because again, this is a public building that we're looking at leasing, and we've already leased out to them. So we could always look to renegotiate the agreement. We have to still follow public purpose related lines.
Sure.
So, but again, I would recommend that we not take it over to then start renting it out, because again, we're already part of the way through that 3-month process.
I wouldn't say to necessarily do that now, but I think we should look into it in the future.
Sure.
Just for potential, other clients that may come through that building if it still remains in the city's hands. So I just want to throw that out there, but I think that's a great option. I was wondering that too whenever I was reading the material, saying, hey, this could be potential revenue for the city.
Yeah,
But you make a good point.
There are some options that we could, if we wanted to renegotiate the lease, which kind of gets in the next item a little bit here, but there could be some options that allow her and the city, Supreme Mall and the city, to have more options available there, do more things with the building, give Supreme Mall some more options, give us some more options. There's some things that could be negotiated there, but we can get that in the next item there. But,
When is the due date to re-up on that lease?
Well, it was, we had to notify as of April 30th. And so we did have a conversation at the time. We both spoke and we both felt, okay, yes, we will continue the lease for another 2 years, which was allowed in the lease agreement. But this conversation has come up again since then. We did discuss a while back, but that kind of went to the side, and now she came back again after the April 30th deadline. So we've missed that deadline, but we could always mutually renegotiate a lease, so.
Yes, after I got from the state sending us emails and things like that, it let me know this year you will not be able to serve during the summertime, because COVID is over. So that was just one of the guidelines. That's when I talked to Grayson.
And one thing we have to understand too, the nonprofit follows Samantha Hughes. It does not follow the building.
All right, any other questions?
What does that mean?
Well,
No.
she can operate her nonprofit. She doesn't even have to use the city's building to operate her nonprofit. Somebody made the point about the nonprofit and operating out of that building. The nonprofit follows her wherever she goes, Supreme Malt.
I see. Yeah,
That
I-
building, if the city okayed to do other things in rent, that would be out of the distinction of Supreme Malt and the nonprofit food program.
Right. Supreme Mall just couldn't have possession of the building if you were doing for-profit activities is what I was, I totally agree.
Well, I wouldn't think we'd want to rent it with her equipment in there. No, we wouldn't want to do that at all, so, I just didn't know. So. All right, I'm
All
done.
right. No further questions or discussion. I'll hear a motion.
Make a motion to waive the event center rent for June, July, and August, renewing the rent beginning in September.
I'll second.
A motion and a second. All in favor of the reduction of rent, say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. Motion carries 7-0. Item number 14, discuss a request from Supreme All, Inc. to consider donating the event center to their nonprofit corporation.
In parallel to that conversation, Ms. Samantha Black also approached me about long-term look of the building. Again, the last item was more short-term, immediate, June, July, August, but long-term, she's requested that we consider donating the building to Supreme Mall. As a nonprofit, under state law, we have the ability to donate property to nonprofits. For profits, we can't do that. We have to put it out for public sale. But we do have the ability to donate to a nonprofit if it is perpetually used for public purposes. That would be on the deed in perpetuity for that. And so, but with this, we've had some preliminary conversations about this. This is similar to what we did with the Boys and Girls Club here about a year or so ago with the ball fields. We would have to have a reasonable assurance, we have to have findings that we believe that it will be used for public purposes. So again, we've had some preliminary conversations what this would look like. She has given us a list in your packet here of some ideas that she's working towards. Women empowerment group, safe skating on some Saturdays, mentorship programs, career events with nurses, chefs, business owners, and many others, college days, summertime job fairs for out of school children and anybody else, refocus program for the mothers in the community, senior citizen games and hot meals, and many other things is what she gave to us. I think this probably needs to be worked out more, but we also can work in some generalities as well. But so with this, we would, if we were to proceed with this, let me back up here a little bit. In order to do this, if we were to donate to him, we would need to survey the property off. So she would have to pay to hire a survey to officially survey off the building. And I asked for the parking lot as well. There's no point having a building without a parking lot, so survey the entire property off there, which is again similar to what the Boys and Girls Club was asked to do. That she would fund that and cover that expense. That's going through the platting process like you would any other property, and submit that for us for review. Then at that point, we can entertain an agreement or actually give a deed to donate the building to her. So this tonight is mostly to kind of get your thoughts before she goes and spends money. I recommend to her that she appear before you tonight and see if you are interested in donating the building to her. Other options, of course, are to keep the building, not consider donating it. Another option could be to renegotiate the lease. I know talking to Ms. Black in the past, lease rent has been a concern for her, as well as restriction on what she can use the building for. Again, when you look at the lease, it's for food preparation purposes, so that kind of restricts her to the kitchen area over there in practice. If we could always try to renegotiate the lease to allow some more options, some more public purposes along these things, and then we can even look at reducing the rent or keeping the rent. There's a lot of options within this. So one extreme is to do nothing. Another extreme is to donate completely. There could be a medium in there to where we don't donate, but we don't do nothing. We renegotiate for different lease amounts if we so wish. Another option is to put it out for bid. That would ease her future restrictions. Again, with that public purpose in perpetuity, it would always be over Supreme Mall at all times in the future. So if she were to buy it at a public sale, she would forever own the building without any restrictions. But again, there's a risk involved in that. She could always be outbid. And I would never recommend to you that we pull back a bid just because the person you want didn't win the bid. And so if we go that route, we follow through on that route. Otherwise, you kind of lose the integrity of that process going forward. So there is risk involved in that. Those are some of the options that you can consider tonight. And I would encourage you to ask her any questions you have about her desires for the building.
All right, council, what questions do you have?
I think, on a personal note, one, this sounds like a business decision, and I don't make business decisions without seeing the building, going inside the building, learning more about the building, learning the history of what the city has used this building for, what is the applicant wanting to, use to potentially be able to use this building for an expanded reason. So I think we need to have a bigger conversation on this matter. That's my personal opinion. And whether that be coming up with a think tank to see, like, hey, what are we looking for? What are our questions that we want to ask? But a lot of things that I'm thinking about and kind of wondering is that these are all great programs, and I like this. My question is, where do you get the funding for this programming?
Again, I am a nonprofit, and I will be able to get my grants going that I have been working on. Like I said, this lease limit me, so it's no sense of, I can't move with this lease.
Right.
My hands are like this, so. With this I have going, I'll be able to I've been talking to people that's willing to come in and do these things with me, and the grants I'm working with a lady on that as well. So it's just like on a standstill to see what I could do,
I got you. I got you. That's kind of my position, is I kind of want to be able to sit down and think a little bit more about this before we make a full-fledged decision.
Understood.
And have a good discussion between council and you to see, hey, what are the options here? What are we looking for? What are you looking for?
Yeah, basically, and my whole vision is to be the community, to help, to uplift, to have resources where they could come and say, I could go there and get those, the help I need. And some for the children to do on some weekends. That's a big building, and it's got a concrete floor. They can skate on it. All I have to do is mop it, and it'll go right back the way it used. It'll go back the same way, and it'll give them something to get off the street. I live in the community. I see it, so I want something. I want to be a beacon of light, and along with y'all, we all could be a beacon of light. That's it.
I think it'll be awesome too with the low-income apartments.
Oh, yeah.
Right. I really think it would be awesome if, it would help the kids. Some kids can't get a ride to City Square. Some kids can't get a ride to the park. Yeah. But if they live across the street, their parents could walk them down the street to her building. So I think it's something I really think we should look into.
Well, I'm open to looking into it, but just as you're a nonprofit, all of the nonprofits that I've dealt with have a board of directors. Do you have a board of directors? Because I'd like to see that, and I'd like to see, what your overall monthly expenses are, and I realize, that would take some of the burden off of you, but another option is for us to expand the use of the building, because you have a lot of constraints on you right now, and give you a much reduced rent, but still let you operate and expand what you offer. As a council, with anytime tax dollars are taxpayers are paying, I think we have to be very transparent and very accountable to what we do. So I would want to look at where this leaves the city, what kind of oversight, because you would be getting a limited title to it. And also, one other question is, grants would be one source. Would you be having fundraisers for that?
See, I can't even do that now.
Yeah. So I would just like us, for staff, to ask for more information that you could bring to us.
Is there
Understood.
more specific information? We can definitely find out more information about the incorporation,
I'd
the board.
like to see tax returns back. Did you start it in 19, is that right?
Yeah.
Or 20?
19.
Let's do
The
2020.
end of 19,
End of
August.
yeah, I mean, 501(c), that's pretty easy under that title to find the tax returns on that. So see the tax returns, and then the balance statements too, to make sure that everybody's on the same page. Also too, to understand that going forward, it'd be a deed restriction, right?
It would be, yes.
And so we would still be policing that if for whatever reason that entity acted outside of the deed restrictions, is that right?
Yes, realistically, that's complicated. I mean, again, resource-wise, we're not going to walk in there
No.
on a regular basis to check and everything, so it would just be, is there evidence presented to us that we can investigate? But I would not propose that we send staff in to just
No.
check on any, whether it's a Boys and Girls
But that's
Club or anyone, so.
That's our prerogative to, I say police it or regulate it. That's not when you turn that over to there's not a state entity that checks and makes sure that is exactly what's happening there.
I don't believe so, no. I mean, again, it would be her property. We can't just walk on the property
Right.
without permission.
Right.
But, yeah.
So when you say deed restrictions, exactly what does that mean? I mean, what?
So like, say a piece of land, you're going to sell 25 acres out in the country and you're going to split it up into 2-acre lots, and you don't want trailer houses on it. You can deed restrict a piece of property that doesn't have trailer houses. In my business now, we have some of that stuff happening, and a sheriff actually does it, county side does it, but they go and actually note the person for if you're outside of your restriction or, where you're not supposed to be, and then they give them a warning, I believe, and then the sheriff actually takes over and can go in there and pull out whatever the restriction may be. There's everything from trailer house, you can put anything in a deed restriction. So that's what I'm saying, and I don't want us to get in a deal, and I don't want you to get in a deal where we have to deal with it down the road, or maybe you're gone in 25 years and your board's doing something that, that we have to deal with, or something that's not, it's something to think about, because it's something we have to deal with as a city, and we also have to deal with as a nonprofit. So I want to make sure everybody understands there is still some, that's your clawback, more or less.
Right. I mean, and this is a local government code provision. State law requires that in order to donate property to a nonprofit, that there has to be a deed restriction that says that she would own that, the nonprofit can own that as long as it is being used for a public purpose. So, for example, we've kind of talked about it a little bit. It may not be a public purpose to use that building to have rented out for family reunions. So that might be something that causes a problem with the deed restrictions. We have a similar deed restriction because it's a similar provision of law on our sports complex in all the land out there by the Civic Center that was donated to the city from PJC. There's a deed restriction in that deed that says if ever we quit using that for a public purpose, that has to go back to the junior college. So it is something that you have to pay attention to. Again, as Grayson said, it's not like we're going to be the deed restriction police so much, but if we were to find out that there is a non-public purpose happening in that building, we would be under an obligation to take some action.
So just using the softball complex as an example, don't we have people that lease those out and have leagues for money? Because I know I played in them for years through Camel Soup, and we paid to use those facilities. So somebody is making money off of those, am I correct?
Well, it's a little different than that because it's under the education code. So there's a slight distinction between that. But part of that transaction was that the softball team gets certain priority use on those fields. So there's some distinctions between that. That might not have been a really good example, but we would have to pay attention to at least not close our eyes to what's happening in the building. Not that anything bad would happen in the building. It's just that we have to kind of be aware.
If we were to rewrite this lease, renegotiate a lease, would it be legal to allow Supreme All to sublease for events?
Well, it would certainly be legal for us to do that with the lease. Now, what that would do for her and her nonprofit status is something between her and her board and their attorneys. And I can't give her the legal advice on that, but that's certainly something that we can do because the lease isn't predicated on the fact that she's a nonprofit. I mean, that was attractive to us as a reason to lease the property to her, but we could certainly open that up in a renegotiated lease. And, if you were interested in reducing the rental on that as well, yeah, there are lots of options that really a renegotiation of the lease may be a more attractive solution to the problem because you don't have that deed restriction hanging out there.
And I'm not sure if this is a good comparison, but the school districts, Boys and Girls Club, they're nonprofit, but they all rent their facilities out for money. You can't just go use them for free because there's costs,
Sure.
in that associated with it. So they rent those facilities out.
And I may have used a bad example. I will certainly make sure that I'm not misquoting that. As to what how wide an ambit that could cover.
Well, the question kind of is can she charge for people to use the facility?
Yes.
Well, yeah, that is the question.
Yeah.
That is the question. And, certainly with nonprofits too, it's not that you can't make any money. It's just you're not a profit-based association. You charge for some of your services. For example, I was on a board of directors for a facility that has an after-school program for special needs children, and we don't do that for free. We can't keep the doors open. There has to be a sustainability model there. Exactly. So it's not so much that everything has to be for free. That's not fair.
Also, the Boys and Girls Club, the buildings across the street that I think that was donated to the Boys and Girls Club, they have for rent signs up. They're nonprofit, right?
Yeah, but I don't know who donated that to them. It's not anybody, there's not a restriction
Only if
for.
the city donates.
It's only if a governmental body donates.
Okay.
But if you, Ms. Moore, wanted to donate some of your personal property to them, there's no restriction on what they could use that for.
Yeah, we're accountable to the taxpayers,
Right.
basically. And I know Mr. Pankosh can probably speak to this more than I can, but I've served on the Citizens Review Committee with United Way, which several years ago, you spend 3 days, all day, listening to the executive directors and the president of the board of all nonprofits who are asking for United Way funding for the next year. They must provide proof of 501c3. They must show their tax IRS forms. They must show all their financials, their tax return, as well as salaries and how many employees. And that's just to make sure that there is oversight. And so I don't think we're I don't want you to think we're picking on you, but this is what nonprofits do. Usually there's 25 that are funded, and it's just, this is, to me, those are donations.
I don't think that would be a problem with that, will it, Ms. Black? You too.
Okay.
And I'll also add to that, I think everyone wants to see a good partnership here. And if it's something that's going to be advantageous for you and for the city, that means that we've done our job the right way, both sides. So I think furthering the conversation and understanding more of what is it that you would like to expand the scope of. And let's look at it financially, let's look at everything and make sure everything is up to par. But I'm open to it. I think that's a fine option, but I think we need to have a good discussion and figure out what is it that you're looking for, Ms. Black, and for the entity's purpose, and what is it that the city's looking for in terms of, are we wanting to keep this, or at least if we make some money off of it, great, but it's helping you at a reduced rate, and you get a little bit more leniency in terms of how the governance of how this project is going to go forward.
What was that building originally built for? Does anybody know?
Bingo.
Bingo was the original build.
I don't know about original.
It belonged to the program before, and then y'all got it.
City of Paris got,
For
there's
a
like
dollar.
55
Y'all
acres.
paid $1 for it, and y'all got it. I've done my research. And
Uh-huh.
y'all paid $1 bill, and y'all got that, and y'all used it for a bingo hall every now and then. When I got the building, it was awful. Me and my aunt went in there, hands and knees scrubbing. It was mice. It was awful. So it hadn't been used. So I kind of brought it back to life. So that's what it was. It put some love in it, that's all.
Mr. Path, how much is the survey if we went through with this?
It's several $1,000s, based off experience from other ones. I mean, I can't give you high and low end, but it's not hundreds of dollars. It's
How much land were you talking about surveying off there? Just parking lot and around the edge, kind of?
I couldn't give you a good idea. A few acres.
Right now, I mow a whole lot. It's a lot. It goes all the way down. I have to mow that often. Pay somebody to mow that. It's all around the building, and this goes all the way down there. And we just kind of stop and meet with the people with the fairground. Wherever they stop, we'll stop, or we'll go a little further. I don't know how far it is, but it's a lot.
Okay. Are you clear kind of on what the consensus of the council is?
Well, if I understand, I think the next step is to gather some information before she starts a survey process, but to perhaps Councilmember Pankaj can maybe go and tour the facility. Maybe the two of you meet and go see the facility. I think that was a request of Mr. Pankaj. It sounded like there was a request for some financial and information there. There's a request for some board information. I think the overall, I'm still gathering the consensus still to be moving towards donation of the building instead of renegotiating the lease.
I'd also like to point out too, the Fair Board needs to be aware of this, make sure that they're, maybe them, not necessarily bless it, but also have some input on it too, because they have an obligation out there for what they do and their different events and so on.
The two are unconnected at this point, and they did sell it to us.
Okay.
We can definitely make them aware of it.
Okay.
But they'd probably have no legal opinion on the matter. So
we own it. Right.
yeah, we can make them aware of the deal. So, but otherwise, it sounds like that we're still moving towards possibly donating the building. Are we looking at looking at still both entertaining both renegotiating lease and donating the building? Is that what we're looking at still?
I'm kind of
I think those are
leaning
the two.
towards renegotiating the lease,
Yeah.
more flexible for the use, Supreme Mall's use.
Yeah.
And then let her decide whether or not she wants that burden. I mean, let's look at the lease
I agree.
and open it up.
Well,
So that
perhaps
she could see
we
if she
can meet
wants
and
to
talk
put
about
up with
that.
everybody's rental and.
Exactly.
Because I don't know if you know what you're getting into, madam.
So let me
Renting
just,
that building out for events and things. I remember when the Civic Center opens. That was quite eye-opening, ma'am.
well, just one clarification, when we say opening it up for public use, that doesn't mean a citizen can come to the city and say, well, I want it October the 21st.
No.
You know,
No.
it has to go through her, and she has to approve it if we go that direction.
Again, currently, right now, the lease is with Supreme Mall, so
Yes.
it has to go through the current lease process, which would be a subletting through our permission, as long as it's food-related purposes.
How many
We'd have to
square-
renegotiate all of that to even allow that to even be an option.
Right.
How many square feet is that building?
Do you happen to know?
Like 7,000 square foot, isn't it, or 5 or something?
I don't remember if
It's like
it's
a
a-
70 by 120
it's a
metal building,
lease.
if I remember right, yeah.
And just for the record, Ms. Black did supply us with a lot of her financial information last year. She supplied a lot of stuff. I don't know if you supplied the
No, yeah,
tax
we
information.
had some budgets, but we didn't get the tax returns.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was doing 940s, you know, because you get a certain amount, you got to do it.
I was going to say also, I wouldn't be doing my fair share of responsibility here in the community without saying you should really look into the United Way. They can supply funding for nonprofits. And so please, I mean, I want to be able to open up that avenue for you, because there's a lot of help that nonprofits can get in our community with agencies such as United Way or Underwriters. So please look into
Right.
that, and if you would like some further help
Yes.
on that, please reach out. I would love to be able to
Okay,
work with you.
thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Ms. Black.
So I guess at this point here, we will just pause this process. We'll gather some more information. I'm going to meet with Ms. Black, talk about those options a little bit more. And I think so far the options still are donating the building or renegotiating the lease is what I'm kind of gathering from different sides and everything. So
Yes.
Do we have an appraisal of the building and property?
we don't.
Because if we're going to give something away, we need to know how much it's worth
Yeah.
to me.
I agree.
Yeah, we can try to get a value of the property. So.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll also point out too, some of this information that we receive, we'll have to also measure how much that we can make public for her operation's sake. So Ms. Harris and I will be talking about that. And so, but we'll have to work through that carefully about how much we can just put out there public.
Oh,
So
yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
Needs to be fair.
Thank you. Item number 15, discuss and act on an ordinance amending section 7.03 smoking of the Code of Ordinances to prohibit vaping in public places and to include a variance process for businesses with semi-enclosed places of employment.
Mayor,
Mr.
Mayor
Vine.
Pro Tem, Council, we already heard someone speak very passionately and intelligently earlier in the citizen comment. While that was not choreographed, I'm going to use it as a springboard and introduction. I'll speak directly to the e-cigarettes and vaping, and city attorney is going to speak to the remaining portion. E-cigarettes and vaping have become very popular, especially with youth and young adults, and there's an alternative to traditional tobacco cigarettes. Some cigarettes, e-cigarettes, contain nicotine, while some do not. Some contain THC, some do not. Current city ordinances do not regulate the use of e-cigarettes. As we heard earlier, many cities have adopted ordinances to include vaping in their smoking ordinance. According to the U.S. Center of Disease Control, CDC, most e-cigarettes contain nicotine, a known neurotoxin considered to be one of the most highly addictive substances available for public consumption. While the users inhale e-cigarettes aerosol into their lungs when they exhale, bystanders can also breathe in this aerosol when the users exhale it into the air. The FDA has also raised concerns about the epidemic levels of youth, the use of e-cigarettes, which may lead to the use of conventional tobacco products. Again, our current ordinance does not include vaping or e-cigarettes, and we would recommend that it does.
Thank you.
In the second part of the ordinance that you have in your packet, you'll recall that it's been some months ago that a group from Turner Pot came in. We kind of had smoking in bay areas one way and then another way, and then it went back again, and this group came in, and the people at Turner Pipe in the Wilding Bay really want to smoke. So we talked about having a variance process, and I'm getting to this now. between the time they all came in and now, Turner had a pretty drastic reduction in force, and it kind of became a back burner issue. But they're starting to ask about it again, and since we were talking about revising the ordinance to talk about vaping and e-cigarettes, it was a good time to do them all at one time. So at the council's direction, I have tried to come up with a variance procedure for the business owners, because I understood that is what you were interested in doing. For semi-enclosed spaces, we've added a definition for semi-enclosed places for some place that has at least one of these big bay doors. So I put in an application procedure with requiring information that I think you as a council would want to know. For example, is it someplace with a big bay door, or someplace with just a little garage door that really isn't opening an enclosed space at all? A notice provision for the company to put up to make sure its employees know that there's going to be a public hearing. And of course, the ordinance or the variance is in the control and would be granted by the city council. And that would be a final decision, non-appealable. I've got the variance set up for being a 3-year variance, and, in perpetuity, they can renew that as long as the city council agrees to that. They would come back with a new application. So that was my attempt to put in what I thought was a fair variance procedure to both those who were interested in smoking and those who were not, because part of the issue we've had, at least in that location, is some that were really opposed to that. So they've got the ability to come and be heard at the public hearing as well. So I tried to strike a balance there, but certainly this was my first shot at trying to come up with such a procedure, and if it requires too much of the business or not enough, you can let me know, and we can always bring back a revised ordinance to you.
All right. Questions of staff?
I have a comment.
Okay.
Okay, when this all started, and we worked in the variance that we all approved as a council, no offense, Ms. Moore, you weren't here, but I know that you will support this. I feel very strongly. But we asked that there be a petition signed by the majority of the workers that work in that area. And we also asked that the variance be signed not only by the plant manager, but also by the human resource director. Those entities needed to sign, acknowledging that they were aware of the variance and that they were in support of the variance. Certainly the plant manager, because, it is their plant.
Right.
But human resources, because this may or may not affect the company's health insurance that is afforded to the employees. So those were a couple of things that were included in our requests or our allowing of variances.
Okay, that's easy to put in.
Good.
I'll just say, just as a general note, I know that when we had this discussion last year, I think the intent behind this variance process that was thought up and put in motion now is to retain those employees. And right now, we need that. We need help. Every job out there, every business needs help. And so, although I am completely opposed to smoking, I am not a big vaping guy, I'm not a fan of it. If there needs to be a variance, and if these companies and business owners need that support, then by all means, I'm in all support of it. But I want to make it as easy as possible to be able to have that variance, so that way these factories and business owners are able to continue their work. So I appreciate and applaud city staff and Ms. Harris here for thinking about that and putting that forward. But I want to make this put into effect that, hey, we get this as easily as possible for these business owners to conduct their business.
Is what you have in front of you
Good
too
enough?
difficult?
No.
Okay.
I think it's just fine.
With the added that
From the HR. Yes.
Knox said, okay.
With the amendments that Ms. Knox has proposed,
Very good.
I think that
That
it's
were in the
very fair.
original
Yeah.
variance
I think it's
requirements.
very fair, and I think we're also looking out for them, for
Right.
their, health insurances and such, so.
Okay.
Kudos.
And the other employees.
Yeah.
Was there something I read in here, pardon me, was there something in here that I read, there's a fee to apply for variance, is that right? Or am I mistaken?
What I put in the memo is that, because there's nothing in this, it would be an amendment to the fee schedule. If you don't want a fee, we don't have to put anything in the fee schedule. But there is some staff cost associated with getting the presentation and everything ready for council.
If
But
there was-
that's completely up to you if you want to charge a fee.
If there was no ordinance, no variance, no smoking, we weren't controlling that, can a company like Turner Pipe or American Spire Weld decide that their employees cannot smoke on the grounds?
Absolutely.
It's their company.
That's what I'm saying. I have a hard time restricting them at all. I don't know, I don't think that's what we're making a decision of tonight, but I just want to state that I misvoted, and I think it's, whether they want to smoke or not, it is definitely a health risk. It's not good. It does a lot of, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We all know what it does. We've all been privy to the information our whole lives, but if a company, we're taking freedoms away every day, and we take it on a federal level, we take it on a state level, and we're taking it on a city level. So I have a lot of heartburn with even giving them the restriction that they can't do what they want to do on their place. Because what are we going to come up with in a few months or a couple of years? That's my thing. I'm going to vote to do the variance. If there's a way that we could reverse what we did, I think it would be beneficial to the city to get out of the human resources department. We need to let the human resources, the companies run their companies as they see fit. Some of these companies don't want them smoking, period. My past employer, my father, restricted it at all, any property, vehicles, the whole 9 yards, and tested for it. It was a huge expense. You didn't do nicotine on the job because of our health insurance. However, that was his company decision, and obviously in Delta County, there's not any restriction there. But that was a restriction at one time with the company, but I'd rather that be a company decision than a City of Paris decision.
So with these ordinances put vaping pretty much in line with smoking, tobacco, the snuff use and all of that, would it put it pretty much in line with all those regulations? And
On the vaping, we did not include that. There were a couple of provisions that we didn't include vaping in. I think one was nursing homes. What was the other? Enclosed places of employment. We did not, we limited it to public places on the vaping.
E-cigarettes, I don't even know, but e-cigarettes and vaping, is that not the same thing?
Yeah.
It's the same thing, right? Yeah.
Vaping is what you do with
Yeah,
an
I'm telling you,
e-cigarette.
I don't do it, so I don't know, but I've seen it. I just wanted to make sure.
I just read, that's how I know.
Yeah.
So you're going to come back with, what, the ordinance and then an application fee? Suggestion for an application fee?
Well, you tell me tonight if you want an application fee or not. If you're wanting to make it as easy as possible on businesses to be able to get this variance, maybe you don't want to charge an application fee. That's up to you. If not, then I'm not going to worry about amending a fee schedule, the Exhibit A that's the fee schedule, to include one for this variance. So you tell me that. But I will bring you certainly back an ordinance that makes these changes to the procedure for obtaining a variance.
I highly agree with Clayton and what he said. I think if we're going to go through with this, I want to make it easy. I don't think there needs to be a fee assigned, applied to this matter.
I think if they want to smoke in their building, I would say it's not a good idea. And it's your employees or not, your other employees aren't going to like it. Your customers aren't going to like it. et cetera, but telling somebody what they can and can't do on their property, we just keep adding a new deal it's all the time. Us, like I said, all the way up to Washington. There's a new restriction that all of us have to follow. At the end of the day, I have a hard time with adding another restriction on somebody that they have to police, that they have to deal with, that put signage out, or they have to instruct their employees to, you can go smoke, but you gotta do it way over there on the other side of the fence, versus you can do it right there at your workstation and we're okay with it. We don't have to go talk to anybody.
Well, of course, all that's already in the ordinance. That's not anything that's ever been changed from 2014. But this would make, and this is what I understood council to say before, is provide an avenue for those workplaces that do have better ventilation to allow some smoking in in those big areas. I don't think that what we're talking about is that a company that has a big welding bay, that the same things would apply to their office building. I don't think that's what we're talking about. I think what we're talking about is these big open areas. That was my understanding.
I'd be in favor of a very small, if any, fee. Make it easy to, by having a petition signed, you've got the evidence that the workers there want to smoke, and having it signed off by the manager and the HR director, you've got all the, company's approval also, so I'm fine with that.
I like those two additions. Do we act on the ordinance amending it, or with those amendments, or do you bring it back to us in 2 weeks?
I think you would prefer that I bring it back to you so that you're not voting on something you haven't seen.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But I can do it either way.
I agree with that.
Bring it back.
Other businesses in town handle this that may not have, they're not all going to have these open bays or whatever.
So I'll tell you from my perspective, a very long time ago, we used to be okay with it. Then we went completely smokeless, 100% smoke-free in our properties. And then now we're having such a difficult time finding anyone that wants to work, period, even show up. So I'm at that point where the last 4 people that I've hired for the same position, they've been smokers. And I said, just go outside and smoke and come right back. If that's what you need to get by, then go for it. But you still man your position and do what you need to do and put that cigarette out whenever you need to and come back. So I'm trying to be as lenient as possible and, give a dog a bone,
Yeah,
That's all you can do.
At our facility, we had what we call smoke areas. They were enclosed, but they had windows all the way around, so you could open the windows up. But now at Campbell's, you have to go to the parking lot and inside your car, even with the e-cigarettes. So you have to do it inside of your car on the parking lot. So no
And
smoking allowed in
our
the facility at
existing
all.
ordinance is not anything terribly, out of the ordinary. It wasn't groundbreaking or anything. Other communities had done that, and I think that's really the trend, is as a public health measure. But whatever is the pleasure of the council is what I'll bring you back.
All right. Is that a consensus that Ms. Harris bring it back to us
With the
With those amendments, is that correct?
with those amendments? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 16, discuss and act on an ordinance amending Chapter 10, Streets, Parks, and Other Public Ways and Places, Article 10.05, Streets and Sidewalks of the Code of Ordinances to add Division and 8, micro-trenching, to provide regulations and specifications for installation of conduit for fiber optic cable, city rights-of-way through the micro-trenching process. Staff, you did a lot of work on this. I appreciate it. Would you give us that presentation, Mr. Vine?
Yes, ma'am. Mayor Pro Tem, Council, again, good evening. To talk about microtrenching, the ordinance, the city of Paris is experiencing fiber being put into the ground, which is a wonderful thing, and we expect more of that in the future. But when deploying a fiber network, traditional trenching methods can be expensive and time-consuming and cause extensive disruption, especially to public streets. Streets have to be closed while they're dug up, causing disruption to residents, drivers, and local authorities. Costs for labor, permits, and restoration fees are high, adding to budgets and even making some projects uneconomical. Consequently, many installers are now switching to microtrenching, is also called slot cut trenching, and this offers substantial benefits over traditional methods as it involves using a diamond circular saw to cut anywhere from a 1/2 inch to a 1.5 inch wide and 4-inch deep trench. After the microtrench is constructed, a microduct is installed into the bottom of the trench, and it is backfilled and sealed, speeding up the project. By comparison, traditional trenches are at least 12 inches wide, and in order to fit the size of the smallest excavator buckets, and deployment takes more passes to backfill. These factors combined mean microtrenching is typically 60% cheaper than traditional excavations, as well as being much less disruptive to the urban environment. The proposed ordinance you see before you sets guidelines for constructing a microtrench within the city limits of the city of Paris. It establishes the requirement of a permit prior to any microtrench being permitted or constructed, and articulates the necessary steps required to successfully be awarded a permit. The proposed ordinance regulates the limits of removal, trench width, location of the trenches, provides specific mandates for backfill, trench identification, site cleanup, including pavement reinstatement. Without an ordinance in place, such as the one that's being proposed this evening, construction practices for the construction of microtrenching, the city can expect to see different sizes and types of trenches across public roadways with very varied types of fill material and quality of finishes. Basically, the city needs to protect our streets. While microtrenching does not have the same negative impact on city streets, it does and can still lead to costly repairs, but it's fewer repairs. This proposed ordinance will help minimize the negative impact on our streets and save the city money on pavement repairs in the future. The ordinance will require contractors to obtain a permit in order to engage microtrenching, and also giving the city authority and control over where these trenches are placed. So it's in our best interest. There will be a nominal fee attached, and these permits are then expected to set off the expense associated with staff to review these permits application. And it is the recommendation that council adopt the microtrenching ordinance as presented.
Thank you.
I worked with, of course, City Attorney Stephanie, and then the city engineer, Chris Downen, on this project.
Any questions of staff?
The only question I have is, has anyone reached out to you on their opinion on this?
I believe he had talked to some different developers, and it is a very common practice. It's cheaper for the developer as well, for the installer. It's a lot quicker, it's a lot cheaper, it's a lot easier.
I ended up, after reading all this, I ended up watching some videos just to kind of educate myself a little bit further, but it seems like a great improvement in terms of labor in general, and then maintenance overall for the city. So
less disruptive, absolutely.
Yes, I'm totally in favor of this. This is amazing.
Is that savings passed on to the consumer in this?
I do not know.
We can hope.
Yes, we would hope so.
It's just another process of laying wire, conduit, and things
Yes.
around sidewalks, underneath sidewalks.
Under streets, yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
in high frequency areas or
Yes.
places where there's a lot of stuff, yeah.
And instead of experiencing a big dip when you drive down the road, you probably won't even feel it.
I'm in favor.
Any other comments or questions? I'll hear a motion.
I move that we adopt, we adopt the microtrenching ordinance as presented from Mr. Vine.
And a second.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries unanimously. Item number 17, discuss and confirm appointment of Ron Hervey as interim library director.
Mayor Pro Tem Council, again, I'm here to present proposal that we make Ron Hervey the interim library director. As you know, Tim DeGelder left effective June 3rd, so we now have that vacant position open. And it is the city manager's task, and he's working with, I get a chance to work with him to fill this position. And even though we do not, aren't required by Section 23, the appointment of department heads shall be subject to the approval of the council. We're not appointing a permanent position. This is an interim. We still want to bring this to you for your approval, for your recommendation as well. Mr. Hervey has over 22 years of library experience and has served in the interim library manager position in the past, and we're very happy that he has agreed to do that again this time.
All right, any discussion or comments? I think we'll be in good hands. I'll hear a motion.
I'll make the motion to approve Ron Hervey as interim library director.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Congratulations. Motion carries unanimously. Item number 18, discuss and provide direction on pursuing a pension bond and agreement with the Paris Firefighters Pension Board. Mr. Path.
Yes, Mayor, City Council, you will find that every once in a while you're asked to make a very big and long-lasting decision, one that gravitates for years and years to come. I think this is potentially one of those decisions that you could make. Of course, wastewater treatment plant, the pay study, I think that's kind of what we do now. We make big decisions that have long-lasting impacts and for the good. And so this is a complicated one, so I wanted to bring it before you tonight before we do any further steps. I do have Fire Chief Thomas McMonigal here tonight in case you have any questions for him from the fire side, and give you that perspective as well. I've given you a lengthy memo here. I'm going to try to summarize it, not to go through it all word for word here, but as you are aware, the city has two retirement systems for our employees. We have the Texas Municipal Retirement System. Last year, the City Council was gracious to go from a 6.12% to a 7.14%. So that's the one we're talking about here. We also have for the non-fire for the fire personnel a Paris Firefighters Relief and Retirement Fund. This dates back to 1941, so it's been long standing. Back in those times, it was common to have your small scale pensions. That's just what they did back during the Reconstruction. Those periods there, a lot of our current employment laws came about during the 20s, 30s, and 40s. So this is one of those outcomes from a lot of that. It is regulated by the Texas Local Firefighters Retirement Act in Texas, and is managed by a local board of trustees, which is made up of a few non-firefighting employees and then a firefighting employees, as well as a citizen. Back in August, an article came out in the Dallas newspaper that was discussing the various TEFLA funds, these pension funds throughout the state. And unfortunately, Paris had the dubious privilege of being the least funded pension in the state of Texas. We were at 29% funded at that time. We're now at 30%, so we've gone up a percent. But we were identified as the least funded. And that doesn't mean that we have the biggest deficit. Obviously, some of your bigger communities have a bigger dollar deficit, but again, from a scale perspective, we had the least funded fire pension in the state of Texas. I did not like to hear that, and so with that, I made it one of my goals to dig more in this, find out what does this mean, what's the immediate impact, what's the long-term impact, how do we solve it, how do we change it, and so forth from there. I learned that in the pension, while we are 29% funded, we do have a plan to become fully funded in 30 years. It's through the contributions, the percentages. The employee puts in 16%, we put in 14%. As I'll get on a little later on here, there is a certain assumption that the benefits will not change. All of that, if those things were to stay status quo, we could become fully funded in 30 years. The truth of the matter is, we believe that for the last 40 years. And so every year it's a moving target. That's no fault of any one person. I mean, changing legislation, changing population numbers, staff coming and going, all that impacts all this. The market has major impacts on this. So it's been a moving goal for 40 years. I honestly, I have no doubt 30 years from now we'll be saying it once again. It'll be 30 years out. And so that is how local pensions are like. You look at all your, of course, metro communities, but a lot of your local pensions, they never get caught up. My last community in Nebraska City, they made the decision back in 1984 to freeze their pension for employees. They are now today down to one employee left. They've almost totally taken that burden off the taxpayers. It's almost all paid off, and so we're working toward that. They do have to still fund the future requirement of that, but it's been dwindling down in numbers, so they are nearing the end of being out from underneath that burden there. And then another issue here is with that reality of never really ever getting caught up, there is always the potential danger to the employees and their spouses and their families that we may have to make tough decisions at some point in order to rein that cost in. That has happened in, of course, metro communities. I'm not trying to compare us to metro communities, but as we've seen, they've gone there before we have because of just the scale there. But that's a danger that could always exist. So from that, I met with the Board of Trustees back in November of 2021. The Board of Trustees on their own, they've been doing a good job trying to manage this, trying to keep up with it. After the pay increases from October 1st for our current fiscal year, they asked that a new actuary study be done, and so they did that. It was some relatively good news. While we were still at 29% funded, and we still needed approximately $16 million to become fully funded, we had about $5 million in the fund. We had reduced the trajectory from 33 years to 23 years, and so that was some good news. But again, as we know, it's been a moving goalpost for 40 years now or longer. So again, I don't have much faith that we will ever, in 23 years, that we'll be fully funded. Now with that, I also learned that in a very critical component of this equation is the benefit payout itself. Obviously, when you retire, your goal is to receive a certain amount of income through the rest of your life or however actuarial that's done. Back in the early 2000s, the Board of Trustees voted to set the benefit payout at $94 multiplied by the number of years of service per month. So if you've worked 30 years in the service, it'd be 30 times 94 per month. That would equate to about $33,840 a year. That is a very low amount. Obviously, that's always subjective, but that's a very low payout for the work they're doing and the pay they're making. That was 20 years ago. It's still the same today. 20 years from now, it'll still be $33,840. Cost of living is going up. Prices are going up. So it's very reasonable to assume that 20, 30, 40 years from now, $34,000 will be nothing to live on. So the danger with that being, our fully funded status assumes that the board will never vote to change that. The Board of Trustees has the control of that. They can vote to change that at any point there. And so it's reasonable to assume that at some future point the employees are like, enough. We need to bump that up. So our $16 million unfunded liability goes to 18, 20, 22 million. They've been very good not to have done it the last 20 years. They've been very fiscally minded, recognizing that, but they did come to me this year and say, Grayson, we need to figure out a solution here. Either we need the city to pay more money into it every year or something. And so with that, we went about looking for options here. Now, again, some conclusions I came with this was under our current mode of operation, it's my opinion that we are very unlikely to ever reach that fully funded status. Whether we under the current 1614 model, even if we were to dump some money into it with the moving goalposts of legislation, the market, it's just always going to be out there. We're always going to have that unfunded liability over the taxpayers, and it could be growing as the market goes up and so forth. That was one conclusion we reached here. Second conclusion, to simply deposit a large sum of money in order to try to bridge that gap, one requires a bond because we don't have the money we don't have $16 million to put into that. So we'll be looking at a pension bond anyways. And two, it requires that the firefighters agree that for the next infinity, they're never going to change their payout benefit. I think it's unreasonable to assume it's going to be the case. It's been 20 years now, but there's going to come a point again that they're eventually going to ask that we need to bump our payout a little bit. So we'd be looking at another bond at that point. Another conclusion I reached was reaching a fully funded status hinges on the department, again, not increasing their pay benefit. I've said that. I do believe that this will deter young men and women from future service with the Paris Department. We have done a great job of trying to address the pay aspect of this, but with the retirement benefit, there is not a lot of incentive to stay with Paris. If all you're looking at is $34,000 after 30 years of service, for a young man or woman coming to the department today, why would you accept that 30 years from now? You'd be going to McKinney. You're going to other communities there. So there's a problem with retention on that. Another issue I see here is that the growing unfunded liability will become more challenging for our future taxpayers to take on and address, particularly if the benefit were to be increased by the Board of Trustees. Again, we're on the hook for that $60 million. It's our expense, the city taxpayers' expense. And so that will only grow in time. That's a risk that we have, and we've had for years, and we'd be looking at continuing to have. Another issue is legislation could change. There was a measure here about a year or so ago to where legislation was looking at forcing us to bridge that gap. You are all aware of SB 2, our caps we have on ourselves. We don't have the ability to just simply raise money to do that, to raise taxes. And we had that 3.5% cap on us. So there would be significant cuts to the budget there. Thankfully, that legislation went nowhere, but through my research, that's being talked about. It may eventually come a point where legislation says, you know what, done, you must now bridge that gap. And then we are stuck with trying to figure out how to do it last minute. Another issue here is to ask the fire employees and the taxpayers to just increase their annual contribution from $16.14 to something more than that. That's going to become a more and more challenging request, and again, it's just a perpetual Band-Aid to address the situation. Right now, for the other employees, we're paying $7.14, but in reality, under TMRS, we're paying close to 8% for employees there. It's a much bigger pool, Again, I'm not saying our fund is not well run. It's just they have a much bigger team. It's a statewide program, so it is a very well run, well established program that is with the markets and the economy of scale. It allows us to go from 14% down to 8% for our contribution. So it's a great program. But to go from 16.14 something higher than that when we have the option to go to a 7.14, it's difficult to accept. And then finally, last conclusion I reached was even if annual contribution was increased, the annual benefit was not increased, and the city deposits a large sum of money, what ground have we gained by doing that? Eventually, the retirement benefit will become undesirable for both the employees. Again, $34,000 a year is going to be undesirable, and also we're going to eventually have to shore it up again. So with all that in mind, we went about trying to find a solution that would be more of a long-term solution for both the employees and the taxpayers. So I went to look at TMRS. It's well established, it's well run, it works. It costs us a whole lot less money than this pension does. It costs the employee less and the city less. So we looked at that. Our current idea at this point here is to freeze the pension, which means basically we'll set a date in the near future to where the pension, there's no more new additions, no more contributions by employees, no more new employees going into it. Their benefit stops as of that date. When I say that, is their accrual, their use of service stops at that date. So if you have 10 years of service, it's stopped at 10 years. And it freezes right there. The benefit itself, payout will not change. They will not be able to vote an increase in that benefit in the future. It freezes completely. But simultaneously, we transition the employees to TMRS. We worked with the actuary on this. The pension board's actuary. They have found this to be a benefit to the employees. It will cost them less money. It will give them a better retirement benefit. And on our side, it costs us less money every year for contributions. Again, we'd be going from 14% contribution down to closer to 8%. And I have seen our current numbers for this upcoming fiscal year. We're down closer to 6% this upcoming year. So a lot less money per employee than what 14% would be. So that looks very, very promising, very good. Again, another added benefit there for the employees, they would be going from 16% of their paycheck down to 7%. So that's obviously what other employees are getting, so there's a benefit for that there. Now, to do this, we would need to take out a $12 million bond, a pension bond, to do this. Again, while simultaneously freezing it and transferring. I would never recommend to you just a pension bond just outright without solving the long-term goal, because if you just did a pension bond today, you'll be back 7, 8, 10 years from now to do it again, and then again, and again. That's what pension bonds, they help float it for now. Longview and other communities have had to do that recently. They've had to do pension bonds to just float it to the next time they got to do that again. By freezing it and moving the employees over, you have basically hedged your risk. There is an end date. It may be 80 years from now because it has to wait till the final beneficiary passes away, but the numbers start to decrease. You don't have the growing and the growing and the growing there. Let's see what else I want to cover here. So we've worked with a very good team on this. We've worked, of course, with the Board of Trustees. We've worked with their actuary. We've worked with the board's attorney on this. We've approached TMRS. We have approached our own bond counsel for the bond itself. We have worked with our financial advisors. We believe we have a way forward. And the neat thing, but of course the scary thing is, from what we can tell, we'd be the first in Texas to do this. We cannot find anyone who has done a pension bond while simultaneously freezing it and moving the employees to TMRS. That's pretty exciting. Obviously, we're plowing new ground there, but we do feel we've found a way to get that done. So, but it'd be through a $12 million bond while moving them over to TMRS. Now, with that, the good news is we have an existing bond retiring this fiscal year. So we have debt service, debt payment, that bond payment that we talked about earlier, the M&O versus debt. We have property tax that's going to be freed up for next year. Now, obviously, we would always love to just let that drop and go away, but this issue exists. And it's only going to be there for the next ever. What I propose is that we keep that levy where it's at and just move that tax money over into paying this new pension bond. I would also recommend that we probably add another penny, though. By doing that, you would save about $3 to $5 million in the life of the bond. We don't have to do that. You can keep it no increased cost there. And still get the job done, but the added 1 cent does save you about $5 million. But again, I would recommend that we proceed the process of issuing a bond, sizing it with the years of debt payment so that the current debt levy stays the same, plus maybe 1 cent. That way the taxpayers don't see much of an increase on that. Again, a goal would always be to drop the taxes, but this is a reality we have to face, either now or our children or our children's children have to face this. I've danced through a lot of this very quickly. I think I've covered most of the high details there. We did meet with the fire employees here. We met with, of course, the Board of Trustees numerous times, but we met with all the employees here recently. I am sensing a very strong excitement for this. And from talking to leadership there, they feel this is the exact right move we have to make right now. And from what they've been gathering from the employees, they feel this would be the right move to make as well. And I will never say unanimous, but there feels pretty close that there is a overwhelming excitement to move forward in this process here. There we go. Now, I will always add the disclaimer that the market is the market. I cannot foresee the market. There always could be a possibility that the market does what it does, and we may have to look at another bond in the future to shore it up. But again, the nice thing is you have hedged your risk. There's no more new amendments to this. Your numbers, your beneficiaries are only going to decrease from this point forward. So I think that's a much better route forward than always having the additional benefits being added on with additional costs. So, any questions, any thoughts? My goal tonight is to get your thoughts. If you are favorable towards this, we will bring back to you bond documents and also an agreement with the Board of Trustees. Part of the deal has to be that they will never vote to increase their benefit payout, because if they do that, if they vote to increase it, what we've done here is moot. So they have to agree to that. So we have to have some assurances from them that they would never do certain things, that this is how we work together. But we would bring those back to you at the end of July, approximately, to work towards that. So.
Well, the day I read that in the Dallas Morning News, I think my first call was to you.
Yes.
And it was horrifying to me that we've gotten in this position. It's going to save our firefighters money. It's going to put money in their pocket that they've been paying into the pension fund, and it's going to save the city because our contribution to Texas Municipal Retirement System is less than it has been to the pension fund. So I'm in total support of it, especially if our firefighters are in support of it. Chief, you have some comments?
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, and members of council. Absolutely what Mr. Path has said. Our firefighters are 100% that I can tell in support of this right now. One benefit to the firefighters that he didn't mention, and that I see very encouraging to them as well, is right now, this current pension, the way it's set up, everybody draws the same pension no matter how much you pay into it. And obviously myself and some of the higher ranking officers, some of the more senior people we have, put a lot more money into this pension when it's 16% of our paycheck going into it. We draw the same, and it's always been that way, and I've accepted that. And this pension, in that aspect, this change wouldn't affect me that much because, you know, I've got 36 years, my career dissipation light is starting to blink. So, but it will encourage future firefighters to promote when they recognize that their promotions actually mean something on their retirement as well. I mean, you won't see many other businesses or industries or even government pensions, retired military. The officers, they have a larger pension because they've paid more money into that system throughout the years. That's something we have not had, and our firefighters are very excited about these possibilities. They're really looking forward to seeing that grow because right now a 30-year firefighter, as Mr. Pass said, you're looking at $33,000, $34,000 a year, where, you know, that would be considerably more if they were under TMRS at this time. If they stayed 30 to 35 years, then they're going to have a larger pension. So I think I can speak for most of them. If we don't get 100% vote on this, it'll be really close. It's all been positive. Our actuary says it's a good thing. Everybody we've talked to said this is a really good move for the employees. The city's legal counsel and bond attorneys have all said the same thing, that it's good for the city as well. We see it as a win-win.
Sounds like your retention would be increased, but do you think the recruitment portion of it, to recruit more firefighters or more experienced firefighters, do you think you'll see an increase in that?
I don't know that I can say we could see an increase, but it certainly wouldn't hurt. I mean, right now, they're being told when they hire on that, okay, you're going to start paying 16% of your paycheck into a pension as opposed to 7%, you know. Oh, and by the way, when you leave, you're going to draw $94 a month. You know, our pension board has been very fiduciarily responsible with this throughout the years. And I think that's one of the reasons that a lot of these funds have gotten in trouble, is because they've bumped themselves up and they've taken raises, whether the fund could actually support that or not. We've always taken the actuary's advice on this, and we've stayed where we were, and this is where we're at.
I see it being a win-win, especially from a sustainability standpoint. And as the mayor and Mr. Parker said, you know, more money staying in your pockets, and then at the end result, if you paid in more, you should get more. You get more out of it, so it's a win-win to me.
I also note, you know, we had our retreat, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that we came up with as a council is we want to instill more pride in this community.
Mm-hmm.
Who are the people that we call when we have an emergency? When we're down as citizens, who do we call on? And that's our first responders.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we can help you, I think that needs to be, that's huge. And it sounds like this is a win, like you said, a win-win, Mr. Savage. I think this is a win-win. We need to instill that pride.
We need to take care of our employees.
Yeah.
And I'm also proud of the fact that we're considering stopping the kicking of the can down the road.
Yes,
I mean,
once
too
again.
many other councils have done that, so I'm really proud of the fact that we're considering not kicking the can down the road.
And you know, just appreciate the efforts, Grayson, that you and your staff put in. You said that no one in the state of Texas has done this before.
What we could see.
Right, so it took a lot of creative thinking outside of the box. So just appreciate what you and the staff did, and the chief, all of y'all putting in those efforts.
Absolutely.
All right.
I would be in favor of authorizing the city manager to continue pursuing this project. Yeah, bring back some more information,
I see
so.
everybody
Is this an
nodding.
elected bond? I mean, we'd put this to,
No, this is the bond that the council would approve. Now, you could always put it out for a vote if you wish to, but you do have the authority to approve this as a council. I'd recommend that you do that as a council. The risk, obviously, is not getting proper education, not getting it done, and we kick the can down the road, and eventually the benefit being increased and payout, and this window goes away.
talking about this and on the budget situation too, I mean, this is a little bit off topic, but I'm paralleling it because what are we looking, we've raised our, not taxes, but we've raised our amount of money that we're taking in. So we're raised taxes the last couple of years, and we went budget neutral a few years ago, and I'm kind of hoping that we calm it down a little bit. Is this going to require us to go up, or you think it's pretty going to stay pretty well level with it since you're losing that other bond?
It's too early to say. I'm still early in the budget process. I'm actually meeting with department heads all this week to go through their requests and start balancing everything out. So, again, I mean, my goal is, I mean, we would love to be able to reduce taxes, but this is a situation that if we don't do it now,
Yeah.
we'll do it eventually. And again, the bad thing is we are in a window right now. We have a lot of young firefighters who have very few years of service in. The benefit is what it is. We want to avoid the future Board of Trustees to say, you know what, done, raising it. There comes a point to where the pension itself is more valuable than what TMRS can offer. TMRS offers what it offers. It's a program calculation and so forth, but some communities, the reason some communities haven't been able to do this is because their pension boards have made decisions to increase their benefits so high that going to TMRS doesn't make sense for the firefighter, looking at it from a self-purpose. Ours, we're in a perfect window right now to where our benefits pay us so low, it's bad for the employee, but it's good for addressing the problem now. And so it may require us to unfortunately adjust the taxes up a little bit. But again, one of the problems that many people say is we don't want to keep adding burden to our children down the road. And I think by not addressing this, that's all it's going to do is just add it down to the road.
Well, and I think it's maybe just semantics, but I don't think we increased the tax rate.
Well, yeah, we
lowered the tax rate,
but the tax levy is what you got to look at.
The amount of taxes went up, valuations went up, and so forth, but the tax
Valuations
rate
went up.
down.
We went down a little bit, but that's a very misnomer to the public, and it's selling eggs or half-price eggs to sell chicken breast at the grocery store. They put something on sale, so you're looking over here. It's like
Yeah, we've always made it very clear in our writing material, though.
I'm talking
what's
about our
happening,
whole
so.
budget, and that's what we got to look at. What we're
The big picture.
the big picture deal, because everybody's appraisal rates are sky. I mean, the appraisals right now are mine went up $75,000 on my house.
Yeah.
I mean, just that quick. Now they can only levy up 15% of that, but also too we have to adjust the tax rate so that people's taxes are not going up $2,000 or $3,000 a year, because that's what
All I can say is if only the demanded services didn't cost anything to do.
I know.
So
I know.
the services that I'm demanded of every day, if only they could be for sure free.
I think if I were going to cut the budget, I wouldn't cut it in the fire or the police department.
No.
Amen.
Two
And I'm not
areas
saying
that-
cut the budget. I'm just
Sure,
saying
sure, I understand.
Yeah.
we've had some pretty incremental increases in the last couple of years. I just want to be thoughtful of that.
Yeah. We've taken on some big issues the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Yep. We're good. Well, I will proceed towards bringing us back to, we're hoping for end of July. We're still waiting on some Attorney General's discussion as well as some other pieces to fall into place, but we're hoping for a July to bring back to you.
Thank you very much, staff, Chief. Item number 19, convene into executive session pursuant to Section 551.087 of the Texas Government Code. 1, to discuss or deliberate regarding commercial or financial information that the governmental body has received from a business prospect that the governmental body seeks to have locate, stay, or expand in or near the territory of the governmental body and with which the governmental body is conducting economic development negotiations, or 2, to deliberate the offer of a financial or other incentive to a business prospect described by subdivision 1 as follows: Lions Head Paris LLC. The time is 7:27, and the city council will now convene into executive session. Item number 20, reconvene into open session. The time is 7:55 PM, and the council is now in open session. No action is required on this item. Number 21, consider and approve future events for city council and/or city staff pursuant to resolution number 2004-081. Does anyone have anything? I'll hear a motion and a second for adjournment.
So moved.
Approved unanimously.